like to do a roll call. Who's here?
Mike Copel, member.
Rick Smith, alternate.
John Racine, member.
Morgan Dean, member.
Rich Rita, select board ex officio.
Alan Burko, alternate.
Catherine Brennan, member.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna just,
You should name who you seating.
yeah,
Vote.
can we seat both?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
gives you 7.
So I'm gonna seat Rick Smith and Alan Burko. Okay. Everyone else is members, so we're good. We have some privileges. We have some people on the floor. I like to hear what they're. Would you like to say anything?
No, really just want to understand 6.
Wanna listen? Okay, I do too. So we're just gonna start with the zoning amendment. Article 7, D. Remodeling repair.
This was the one that Tara and Chief Noyes worked on to remove the outdated language
Yeah,
in
Yeah.
zoning with the new building permit language that to make it so that it will conform with the new building permit
yeah,
language the town passed
yeah, because it's a bit confusing
in
for a lot of people.
2023.
So before we get started, anybody who would like to speak in regards to this on the Zoom or in the audience, just please raise your hand, let me know. And we gotta just keep the amount of conversation down so we can talk about it, okay? The time. Tara, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I think we should take a look at this another one.
The proposed amendment number 11.
Yeah,
Okay, proposed amendment number 11, description, would remove Article 7, administration and enforcement, Section D, remodeling/repairing, as it has been superseded by Selectmen's Ordinance number 17, building permits. Specifically, amendment number 11 would remove the following language and renumber the section accordingly. D, remodel/repairing, a permit shall be required for remodeling or repairing when the value or cost of such remodeling or repairing shall exceed $1,000.
okay, discussion on this. Because I thought at one time there was, I wish Chief was here so we could talk about this. Is he coming in? Do you know anybody?
I haven't seen him, I spoke to him this morning.
I can answer any questions about it, John.
Okay, could you elaborate a little bit more on this, Tara?
So there's some leftover building code language in the zoning ordinance and which doesn't really belong in the zoning ordinance, and this is one piece, and it's become an issue that it's even in conflict with the actual building code language, which says the threshold is $10,000. That's why it's become more urgent not to add it to this year's amendment.
So I guess I'm confused about the 1,000 and the 10,000. Are we eliminating one of them or?
We
keeping
are
them?
eliminating the 1,000.
So we're eliminating the 1,000, go to 10,000. So,
Oh, would remove the bump. Okay.
so,
Yeah, I talked to Mark, clarify it. I misread it too. It's taking that $1,000 level out of, as Tara said, out of the zoning. We're just gonna rely on the language that's in the building permit, which says 10,000.
yeah,
So this just cleans it up. This is just a simple cleanup, getting rid of language that's no longer, well, it's, as Tara said, it's in conflict with the permitting language we now have, the building code language we now have.
so did we vote the $10,000 in?
Yes,
Last year,
at town meeting 2023.
we
the town-
voted it and town voted it.
The town voted it in?
Yeah, we approved it, town voted it in.
Ordinance number 17.
And that was done the appropriate way. It didn't really belong in the zoning ordinance. It belonged as something separate like it is now.
Yeah.
Because
And-
it's different enabling legislation.
And if we vote this out of the language, everything will be okay, but if we leave it in, what happens?
You have people coming to Dave and saying, why didn't my neighbor need a permit? This says $1,000.
Okay. Everyone?
Yeah, this was
understand all
recommended
this?
by Dave too.
Yep. I'm not in big favor of it, but that's just me.
In favor of which?
Any of it.
Can we tell-
Why do I say that? Because
Because
the average
especially-
homeowner could go in and remodel their own kitchen. Well, while I'm in there, I'm gonna do some plumbing and electrical, and I won't say anything. That's my
Yeah.
feeling about it.
That's not a planning board.
No, it's not, but it's just a personal feeling.
Well,
Not
if it's not a
fun.
planning board, then why should we be looking at it?
Because we're taking. out-
Because it's
It's
a relic in the zoning ordinance and only the planning board can. I mean, you're the ones that recommend zoning amendments.
But
Yeah.
John, $1,000 today is like nothing.
understood.
I mean, I know what you're saying, that theoretically, anytime there's anything of substance that goes in, especially the two things that you mentioned of electrical and plumbing, it's not something that I should do in my house. I should have a licensed person that knows what they're doing.
Right, but that's all water over the bridge. It's already been. so-
That's the issue I have.
So we gotta make a motion to remove this style. Rich, you look like you might wanna make that motion. Go for it.
So, what we are doing here, make sure I have it straight, is removing language. Proposing to remove language in the current zoning that is in conflict with the selectmen ordinance that changed building permit back, and that was approved in town meeting in 2023. So I will propose that we remove the language. Let me just get it. Well, let me put it this way. I would propose the amendment number 11, which had been read out already, describing the change, the removal we'd like to make. Proposed to the town as a zoning amendment for the public, and bring it forward to a public hearing on, have we established the public hearing date yet? Well, we'll bring it forward for a public hearing, then we'll
No.
figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I made, is that motion good enough, I think?
Yeah, does that sound right, Tara?
Yes.
Okay,
Seconded.
okay, Morgan seconds that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, done. Out of the way.
Good, one down.
Okay, this one. This one. Amendment number 6. Proposed amendment number 6. Tara, I think I'm gonna get you to talk a little bit about this amendment number 6, so we're all, everyone can be on the page, and I think are we talking something too about a dumpster today?
Not that
A dumpster?
Okay, Mark would know more about it. All right, Tara, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about the amendment number 6. So everyone's on the same page, understand this?
So at the last meeting, you talked about 6 options for dealing with amendment number 6, and I was asked to show you what option 4 would look like. So you should have that handout in front of you.
Yep,
And I actually meant to only send that one page because you already had the others. So now the third one is misnumbered. But so really the only change was to qualify that the 35-foot setback would only apply to non-residential structures. So that's what you see in this option 4.
right. we voted on that and it was 4-3, so that it passed for recommending number 4, is that
No.
correct?
Well,
No,
it only as far as that being the first one that you talk about today. There wasn't any decision to go forward with any of them.
we voted to move forward and discuss 1, 2, 4, and 6, I think.
No,
One,
No,
two-
6 was definitely crossed out.
1, 2, 4, and 5.
You didn't get that specific.
Oh,
There-
we just
We really just voted to continue to.
voted to
discuss it.
continue to discuss all, that's fine too. That's
But we
fine.
wanted to see what 4 looked like.
Yeah, we wanted to see what the change language for 4 would look like, and I think we were looking at 5 as an alternative to 4 as well.
Yeah.
And Kayla's on here as well to help out.
Hi,
Hi,
Kayla.
Kayla.
Good morning, everybody.
Chief.
Chief, we
Bye, Chief.
we took care of you.
Yeah,
Okay.
you've been disposed of.
Thank you.
Well, no, I wouldn't put it, never put it that way. Thank you for showing here.
All right, Chief, thank you. All right, anyone wanna discuss a little bit
Can
more
I
about this?
ask you a question?
A small one.
A small one. I apologize, I couldn't find it. I know, Rich, you're great at bringing everything. Do you have, when we sent out the questionnaires to the public? All right, one of the questions was this issue. And how was the voting on that in the questionnaire? I think that's important.
Was it one of the questions?
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
I don't recall it.
We,
I know we had 5 or 6 questions.
Oh,
We
we had-
eliminated a lot of the questions, remember?
Yep.
We had.
I don't remember,
For the survey. We're talking
I'm
about the
old, I
survey.
don't remember what I had yesterday, so. but
Yeah,
I know I know we had a lot of questions, but I don't remember whether that was one or not. I thought it was.
I don't have it in front of me, but my recollection was that you at the time said that the setbacks were more no-brainers that you were gonna put forward and didn't put those on the survey.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's
Okay.
right here.
Yeah, it wasn't one of the
Okay.
questions.
If that's-
But we did discuss it.
What?
We did discuss it, and based on those discussions, Kayla and Tara put forward some recommendations, I think, in July and then again in the fall. And we've
went
been
into
working
the
through all
survey?
the amendments
They were into the survey we sent out to the public,
in, June or whenever it was.
June, it was sent over the summer. I just didn't remember. I mean, it was long,
Yeah,
it's a long time ago for an old man.
it is. So we did vote something on this though, to see who liked number 4?
Yeah.
Cause we took a vote on
Right.
something.
but we voted to continue the discussion on 4.
On
That's
4,
all, yeah.
and it looked like out of 7, 4 liked number 4.
The vote was only which one you wanted to see the details of to start the discussion today
Right, for number 4,
for number 4.
okay.
So it's not in, there was no question on the survey, okay.
No.
so then my understanding is Tara, please correct me if I'm wrong. So number 4 is saying that, everything stays the same, except if the 35-foot setback does not apply if a building is going to be residential.
Correct.
The way it's written is the flip, non-residential, but it's so,
Mhm.
Yeah.
okay. So it's not like somebody could come and build a shed or anything like that. It has to be something that would be for housing.
And I think one of the alternatives we were looking at, because we could discuss it today, because it would be a minor change in the language that we have. Again, we're voting today to bring it forward to a public hearing.
Yeah.
And then after that public hearing, we vote whether or not to bring it forward for a vote.
Right.
Was number 5, which would somewhat change that to make it to eliminate multifamily buildings. So 4 would be any residential building could be built within 20 feet, and 5 is basically single family homes or
Yeah.
and not multifamily buildings. They're kind of the same, it's just one's
A little meat beating.
One is narrowing it even more, but they're both in the same direction. The change would apply to residential
Mhm.
construction only
Mhm.
from the current 35.
Alan, I know you had something you want to say about this.
I'm still working my way around. This is written backwards.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just-
I got you.
Please.
So this is what we gotta do. We gotta pick out something to bring it for a public hearing,
Or not.
Or not,
or not.
So the other option we have is, we did bring a motion to a public hearing, which was the original. And just to go forward with the vote to go forward with that one, as a
Yeah.
zoning amendment, or after we heard public hearing to go forward with nothing,
To drop it
to
completely.
drop. it.
well, no, I prefer, instead of saying dropping it, I prefer saying postponing it. Which may be the same thing.
It is the same for this year.
For
Yes.
this year,
It
yeah,
would be the same, but you're correct.
Well. My definitions, and again, I'm not a linguist. I'm just a poor dumb accountant. Is that dropping it means it goes away forever,
No, which just means we decided not to put it
not to do
forward.
anything now.
Yeah,
yeah, it just says drop
As
from March.
opposed to
right.
definitely postponing
Just,
it.
just like we dropped
we
other
need more
proposed
time.
amendments before public
Okay.
hearing. We had a public hearing on this
Okay.
one, and now we're deciding whether we want to modify, keep as is, modify it.
Okay.
4-5, or drop it,
Okay,
not bring it
I
forward.
think we should hear what they have to say there. They're important people,
Well,
not that you're not.
they are, but they're listening for the moment.
Well, it's tough to just understand everything, reading it, and some of it didn't seem. So, this helps, actually. I just had one question on the piece you were just.
Just so everyone, so everyone knows who you are, could you just say your
Daryl
name?
Fernandez, 22 Flat Mountain Road.
Thank you.
Certainly. Does the definition of residential include rental? So if I was building a 3-unit building that I intended to rent all 3 units, residential includes that?
I believe it.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yes.
I just, that was just.
Yes.
That would be a
Multi-family residential unit.
And that-
even though it
Yes.
wasn't owner occupied, it still fits under the definition.
But they could do it.
yeah, we have a specific, matter of fact, we worked on it at length, I believe, in the past.
yeah,
I just needed to make sure I understood.
Housing, yeah, it gets kind of confusing, is we had,
Because it's one thing to have 3 condos in front of you, it's different to have something that the owner lives in the view and
Right.
rents the 3 units out.
Sure,
so that would be,
John?
right, that would be 5, single or 2-family.
Yeah.
That would eliminate the multifamily.
Right,
just to confirm, short-term rental is considered a residential use in Water Valley.
I would, thank you, Tara. I was actually asking you about long-term rental. So I just built a building that I wanted to long-term rent. I want to own it, I want to maintain it. I just want to rent the 3 or 4 units that I built.
Oh, zoning can't ever differentiate between owned units or rented units,
Perfect,
long
thank you.
term.
That's all I was
But they're
looking for, was to understand.
They're units, housing units.
and just so you guys understand too, whatever we agree on today still has to go to the public for a hearing and then to the March town voting, so you guys will
Which is
still
helpful,
vote.
because we thought the next step was just to the town vote, and it was really difficult to imagine how people were gonna understand some of this
Yeah,
without. Yeah, so I appreciate that clarification today.
Yeah.
It's really helpful.
Unless we choose not to move forward at all.
Right, right.
yeah,
There is that option too.
Well, then we just have the town
This
meeting,
is it.
nobody attends and nothing's presented.
right.
Well, no, we have other amendments. We have
Yeah.
other zoning
Lots,
amendments to
lots.
vote on.
Can I ask a question? Alan Waters live on Cascade Ridge. So can you take like 45 seconds, maybe Tara, and just give the background on where this came from? Like, why is this submitted? Why is it being decided now? Because when you read through everything, it's like, that's not there.
Sure.
So, but why is it popping up now?
Sure.
And where did it come from? Did we get a letter? Why?
So Tara, did you hear him okay on that? Can you?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Kayla answer that. She kicked off the review of the zoning.
Okay,
Hi,
Kayla,
everybody. So, oh, thank you, John. So we started this project back in really over the summer, and it came off of a few different pieces. So we did a bit of outreach, right? And in the outreach, we talked to a lot of businesses. We did interviews with employers to sort of look at the workforce housing challenge and the challenges some of the business are having, staffing and getting people to sort of consistently show up to shifts and pieces like that. And then, so in that process, we started looking at what kind of things we could do in the zoning ordinance to make it potentially a little bit easier to build housing in Waterville Valley. And so then what I did is I went through and put forward a list of, I think it's 9 or 12 different ways that you might be able to change the zoning ordinance to make it a little bit easier for housing to be built. And one of the things we noticed in there, or I noticed in there as we were going through, is that in your high density residential and village commercial zoning districts, you ask buildings to be set back further from the property line than really in any other time in your zoning ordinance when they but low density residential. And we thought, okay, so if it's a high density zone, maybe we think about bringing that down to just match the standard setback in most of the places, which gives a little bit more room for people to build housing units in the case we're looking at number 4 on those properties. And so that's kind of where this came from. It came from some of the big goal being to make it a little bit easier and open up some opportunities for housing for the workforce to be built. And then specifically in this sort of review of the zoning ordinance of some of the little nuts and bolts that might make that harder or more costly in the town. So the idea on this is with a little more room, maybe you could get another unit or two, which might make it possible to sort of bring forward a multifamily housing project or something like that in the area.
does that help?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. That's what we're trying to figure out. It's a lot of options here.
Why does it seem that the residents, so there's a housing problem for the resort in the town of Waterville Valley, but residents are being asked to change their setbacks as opposed to why wouldn't we be asking the town or the resort to fix this problem? Like why are my rights and my housing and my lot lines being affected? Why wouldn't we just go to the resort? That's the problem.
Kayla, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So it's a little bit of just kind of how we came at the project. And so really, I think I'll start with kind of my big picture view on it, which is that our goal was to explore different options, right? And see how we could open this up, knowing that the resort is actually sort of exploring this topic on their own. Our project was really specific to being changes to the local regulations. And so we came at it with that as being sort of our main focus, is how you can change those regulations to make it easier for those to get built in town. Separately, I think the resort, and I think a lot of people are aware, are working on ways to build housing themselves. But the goal of this project and sort of the funding we received to work on it was specifically through a program that looks at how you can tweak your zoning ordinance to make it a little bit easier.
Paul and Zoom was hand.
Okay, Lori, does that help?
It does. So then how many extra units, if this passes, are there going to be?
There's no way to know.
There's no, it's up to the, right, so this is.
What's the potential over 10 years? So you know how much space this is gonna affect. So what's the best case 10-year potential that every possible space was leveraged? How many new spaces are there?
That analysis hasn't been done.
And I think that there's a couple ways to look at it. Okay, there's a couple ways to look at it. Is that, to answer your question, in my opinion, is you've got, you know, your short term. Should a property owner want to expand and build an in-law suite or whatever, that, you know, it might give them a little more space to do that. But we also are trying to keep in mind the long term. So, 25 years from now, and I know this doesn't affect most of us here, but how do you have as much opportunity and flexibility in a zoning ordinance for redevelopment down the road? So it's short term, who knows, because it's not forcing anything. It's really just truly up to an individual. And however, so it's the short term and long term, in my opinion.
Well, you've got the gentleman on the video who has a question first.
I think also too, it's got a lot to do with the long term. If they, for instance, tear down an association building, which probably won't happen in our lifetime, but we're trying to set some kind of base right now, so it can be moved.
John, can I just,
Uh,
when
wait,
Lori,
somebody-
I need to ask, just follow up on what Lori.
Lori, yeah,
Yeah, Lori, just to come at your question a little differently, so. The planning board is by state statute, a land use board. So this is the town's way of trying to deal with the lack of adequate, affordable housing in town. So that's one, other people are involved, but that's why the planning board got involved. See, what is it we can do? In this case, tweaking our zoning ordinances or ordinance or any regulation, other regulation that may help alleviate this lack of adequate affordable housing. But that really brings you to the larger question is why? I think that's what you were really getting at. I mean, why do we need to do this? And it seems to me it's a question of, what's in it for the residents, right? So the way I have approached it is that we've grown, right? Since this particular setback is probably 50 years old when zoning was first put in 73, and the resort was just starting to really develop. And it was an effort to buffer, I think, single family homeowners from all the development that was perceived that was going to happen in HDR and in commercial. And I think at the time, sure, it made a lot of sense. We were a town of maybe 200, 250. Here we are now, a town of over 700. I think we're 710 now. Here we are, a town of 710. And zoning is not a static phenomenon, right? Zoning is meant to change with the times. That's why you have a board that looks at these things. What has changed tremendously, I think, is that we are no longer, how do I want to put this? We're no longer that retirement oasis in my mind. We are a resort community that requires services and adequate services. So what we get out of having affordable housing in town is a better shot at the town recruiting and the resort, the biggest employer. It's not the only employer. Other employers have all of them in the survey to them indicated there was a very critical need for workers here. So commercial and town services depend on how well we can recruit and retain workers. So the idea was to make it easier for workers to live here. Therefore, it would make it easier for us, either the town itself, because I know we have a problem. Mark can talk at length about this, hiring town employees, all the services we want, trash, whatever, water, all that stuff. And the commercial businesses, why they're closed in midweek, because they don't have anybody who's willing to make that trip up here. That's sort of the bottom line. I don't know if that gets closer to what you were trying to get at.
No, it definitely does, but so you keep mentioning affordable housing, so all the new units that are gonna be built are going to be affordable housing?
Oh, definitely not. I would say though,
going to
it's,
be any housing.
I'm sorry?
So the extra residents or the extra housing units that are going to be built because of this change, it's just gonna be extra housing. You have no idea if it's gonna be another.
There are other, the housing could be built, if you're talking about, sales, right? There's two aspects of this, sales. There may be other incentives that a business could apply for workers, for their workers' benefits that help subsidize their ability to buy a house, or more probably to rent. This allows, this gives a little, I shouldn't say allows, because it already is allowed. This kind of change would facilitate or would allow for a greater use of land for people who already have houses who want to say put an addition on the house and rent that addition out, which is allowed by our zoning. So it's not just sales, but it's also rentals. And there's no way we could analyze this to the sort of degree that I think that Daryl in particular is looking for. The idea is to put flexibility in the zoning so that these sorts of projects can be at least entertained. Right now, they can't. And then those projects themselves, of course, have to come in front of the planning board and go through the hearing process, site plan review, what have you.
But
Could you hold on 1 minute, please?
sure.
Tara, I don't remember.
Paul.
Paul, go ahead. I see you.
Good morning, Yes, good morning, everyone. Paul Badaro, 6 Lost Pass Road. I just want to identify first off, so I have an understanding. Kayla, is Kayla a consultant that got hired under this grant? Is that,
Yes.
she's not a board member? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure who the audience was. The way number 4 and I'm going to go to number 5. I don't know. This seems to be favoring number 4 for some reason, but I think the most operative word in that whole grid, that chart that shows the options, the discussions, is the word inequity in number 5, to eliminate inequity. It's obviously been identified that the planning board believes that this would be an inequity. And it clearly is an inequity. It is an inequity for folks like me and Jenny Lucas, who bought LDR property and bought our properties, understanding a certain zoning would take place. I don't understand how you can make a vote going forward when an analysis has not been done, which was just stated, as to what the impact of this could be. This is not a hypothetical situation. It doesn't have to be a hypothetical situation, as you're all seeming to speak of. We have actual properties in an actual town that have actual zoning as it is. We don't have to talk in some clandestine view that, oh, this could be that, this could be that. We already know what the zonings currently are. We already know what the properties are that are privately owned, that are not town owned, unless the town is willing to relinquish some properties so that we can build affordable housing. Now that's a different story, and I think that should be looked at. For some reason it's not. You want the inequity of impacting people who are already owners that bought under a understanding that existed. You say that there's no opportunity for someone to build. I don't know whether or not the town of Waterville has a provision, like most towns do, for variance appeals and variance reviews. And then that would go through a due process, including abutters. So why is that not adequate going into the future? So those would be my questions at this point. Thank you.
Tara, could you elaborate on that? His questions?
The inequity was my language for describing number 5, specifically because the single family home next door to this gentleman in the LDR can be 20 feet from his lot line, but the single family home next door to him in the HDR or VC has to be 35 feet from his lot line. And I, as a planner, just can't understand any rational reason for that. So that's why I used the word inequity. That was my word, not the planning board's. In terms of variances, that's a really high bar. It's not a way to make the zoning flexible. There are ways legally to make the zoning more flexible. Variance is not one of them. A variance is an appeal opportunity for somebody who just can't make the zoning work on their lot for some reason. They need to be a couple feet closer to the lot line because there's a ledge on one side of their lot or something like that. It's not the same as flexible zoning.
Any other
Uh, Tara, I didn't catch the first part of what you were saying about the inequity as far as it depends who your a butter is. My understanding is that it's 35 feet if you're next to LDR. What was the variable that you were talking about that was inequitable, that you intended the word inequity to
you're-
apply to? Because I look at
if-
the word inequity as applying to the owner of the LDR property. You seem to were saying it was an inequity to a non-LDR owner, so I wasn't following that. I'm sorry.
Paul, let her answer your question, okay?
I had to
Good.
complete my question, yeah, sir. I'm sorry, but I had to complete my question.
Go ahead, Tara.
I see it as an inequity for two reasons. One is that you can add to your house up to 20 feet from their lot line. And your neighbor in LDR can add on to their house up to 20 feet from your lot line. But your neighbor in HDR or VC has to be 35 feet from your lot line.
Yes, because it's A, not an LDR property, and B, not necessarily a single-family residential. That's why it was originally done that way. Thank you.
John, Jenny, other hand.
Yep, just hang on one second. I think, did you have a
I
question?
did, but I think Paul summed it up.
Okay, all right. Jenny?
Yeah,
Have your-
and I'm not sure I heard an answer with regard, excuse me, I'm not sure I heard an answer with regard to why are we treating this as a hypothetical? We know what the town properties are as to what the impact would be to actually produce. Why has Kayla not gone through actually producing something that says this is the potential for actually adding affordable housing, what the impact is, so someone can look at that and make an analysis and whether or not it actually does any benefit for the town.
John,
Kayla,
John, I can respond to that too. Go ahead, Kayla.
I'll take the first response to it. So really, there's a couple of reasons why it's a little bit tricky to do that. So what you're talking about is a build out analysis, right? An idea of how much can be built on a property. And part of the reason why I tell you, I don't know that you could ever make that a really tangible number is because there isn't necessarily a minimum size or a minimum number of units, right? So if you could build 15 more feet further on your home, you could just be expanding your home, right? You could just be staying in one unit and building a larger single family home. You could also be adding on one unit, or if it's multifamily, you could build 2 units that are 20,000 square feet each. You could maybe build 6 that are 5,000 square feet each, or 10 that are 1,000 square feet each. But you don't have a relationship between the square footage in a unit and the space on the lot, right? It's just about the building coverage. So I could never tell you how many units that produces because what we're talking about is really the size of the building. So all I can tell you is the size of the building could get 15 feet closer to the lot line. And we do know sort of how many properties, maybe Tara will remember these numbers from our last meeting, how many places there are low density residential properties that abut these village commercial or high density residential. To sort of speak to your sort of interest, it seems, Paul, the impact on the low density property owner of how many properties it is. I believe it's about 15 we found could have a building built 15 feet closer than it could today. But really, because we don't have a relationship to the minimum size of a unit, it's very, very hard to turn that into a number, even in a scenario where you said if every property owner built it out, which we know is probably not realistic. So that's a little bit on why that analysis hasn't been done, because it wouldn't be an accurate or honest number to stand behind.
Exactly. Exactly.
Can I
Oh, good.
just
You're going to add to it, Tara Schroll.
I've done quite a few build out analyses, and I would just add to that, it's very expensive, and that's why another reason towns don't. I've never seen a town do it as part of a zoning amendment. I've seen towns do it more as part of a master plan, the bigger picture, because of the uncertainties that Kayla mentioned.
And in my response, Kayla, thank you. That was articulate. But I completely agree. Exactly. So I believe what the amendment needs to include is that you can only come closer if it benefits because of the goal that's been stated here, not just in this meeting, but in the December 13th meeting as well. Hearing, I guess, is what this is. I'm not sure if it's a hearing or not, but is that you're going to have people who already have existing properties who are not building affordable housing. All they're going to do is they're going to move it to make money, to move closer to the land, the lot line, to get more units in, to sell them for $1 million condominiums. There's nothing in the proposed amendment that specifically says that it's to drive affordable housing. So that's what I thought the answer was going to be.
Excuse me, I'm
Yes.
gonna give someone else a chance to talk.
Thank
Hang
you.
on.
Thank
Jenny,
you for the time. I would appreciate a response to that, though.
Jenny, you have your hand up?
Hi, thanks, John. Just to round out the discussion of the inequitable question that Paul was asking. So in LDR, we are limited to single family or two family homes with a height limit of 35 feet or 3 stories. In VC or HDR, you could have multifamily structures up to 45 feet. And even 25% of those roof lines can be even 1 story higher than that, as long as there is a 1 story, 25% is 1 story lower at some point. So you could have potentially maybe a 55-foot structure next to you. So if you're going to be equitable about it, if you're going to reduce the setback so that VC and HDR setbacks are the same for LDR, then you should also reduce the height allowances for all residential structures. Otherwise, it becomes inequitable again. The VC and HDR are allowed to build something much larger than anyone in LDR could ever build. And then really just the point of, I hate to keep picking on the villas at Waterville Valley, but all of our, I think, zones, or maybe not commercial, but VC, HDR, LDR, you're limited to a 25% footprint of the total lot size. So I really don't think, I'm pretty sure that the villas are probably at their 25% limit. So all this is really doing is allowing someone to situate a building differently on a lot, closer to a lot line. And it's not really promoting an increase in number of units or anything like that, because you might already be at your 25%. So maybe you ought to consider looking at that 25% figure or the 1/3 open space figure or something to increase the density. That was just my comments on the inequitable part of that. But what I wanted to say is I would like to ask the board to please withdraw proposed amendment number 6 from consideration for 2024. I would say that this grant has been successful. You've identified and articulated the dire need for workers and the related housing shortage, and have already voted to send 5 amendments to a townwide vote. I feel strongly, and some board members and alternates agree with me, that these potential amendments are taking a micro approach to a macro problem. And the link between enacting this one amendment and it leading to an increase in affordable or workforce housing is very weak. There was little to no opposition to the other 5 proposed amendments suggested, and the only one that has faced any backlash from residents is this one. And yet, even though its potential impact is unknown and likely very, very, very small on the desired outcome, the board up until this point is not willing to reconsider this one. I think it was well established at the meeting last week that this amendment is an amendment for the future with redevelopment in mind, given that almost all of the HDR and VC land is already developed. And I think we all agree that our workforce housing needs are more urgent than that. A more effective near-term solution will be to look at undeveloped land that allows residential use, most of which is commercial and owned by one group. And that group also happens to be the largest employer in town, who presumably stands to benefit the most from reliable workforce housing. I suggest working with that group to come up with a creative solution. Maybe there are incentives that could be considered. I don't know what types of incentives are permissible under New Hampshire state law, but perhaps the consultants or town council would. My final point is that our zoning ordinance was originally established in 1973, I think, and it was drafted thoughtfully by residents and neighbors who respected each other and recognized that some people value space, peace and quiet, trees, and other natural features, and therefore LDR was established to meet those desires. I'm asking you to please respect your fellow neighbors and residents. Don't chip away at the space and peacefulness that many of us desire, one ordinance amendment at a time, or before you know it, our town won't have any space or peacefulness left. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jen. Well stated.
Incredibly well stated. Thank you.
Alan, anything come to mind, Alan?
You're here.
Yeah.
I mean, the town should not be uniform. We don't need to cram in as much housing as possible, especially because it's not going to solve the stated problem. Just,
I don't think any of these were designed to solve a problem.
well, they succeeded. They didn't solve any problem.
Right, no, but that's what I mean. They're designed to make things easier. So I guess I'm having a hard time understanding. So when you're looking at Lost Pass Road and in that area, it is dense. You can see into each other's windows, right? So what's 10 feet, right? I don't own a home. I'm not in that area. What is the crux of the issue, I guess? Yeah, go for it.
So we actually bought a slice of land from Ken Ackley, who's the abutting lot to us, to create 10 feet so that we could plant and put up landscape barriers to create that buffer.
Okay.
So we actually spent money because we didn't want. So it is important to have that space. It is important when you have pets to have that space. It is important when you have kids
Yeah.
to have that space. That's why we live and why we bought a lot in an LDR zone. Is so that we could have that space, to Jenny's point. I think she said it wonderfully. So different people buy things for different reasons. When you buy in an LDR zone, you want space. That's why you do it. So that 10 feet, and this is 15,
Yeah.
and it's not 15 of just another residential home. It's 15, to Jenny's point, of up to a 45-foot structure.
Okay.
So now your views are impacted. So now what you're looking at isn't just another house, it's a wall. It's a completely different, it's a completely changed. And so you pull that 45-foot wall 15 feet closer to your house. That's a very different feel. Go stand 15 feet away from a wall and look at it and say, that's a beautiful view.
And
Right, you can't plan.
And 15 feet is relative. Look at it as a percentage of what you're doing here.
Paul, if you're gonna say something, please raise your hand. Mike?
I think what Jenny said is absolutely spot on. And, you know, there's a significant difference in mentality. And I have lots of friends. I think there's like 140 or 145 residences in LDR, something like that. And that means there's something in the vicinity of 1,250 or so, because I think there's like 1,400 residential units in the town, something like that. There's a reason I live where I do. And there's a reason that my friend Mike Fergal, for example, lives where he does. And we made a decision to live in that type of community, in that type of environment. I don't want to pick on my friends in LDR. I have lots of friends in LDR. They live where they live because they like it the way it is. And I think making this change is a significant change to what they bought. And I understand what you're saying. I think it's a major change. I think it's a very significant change to what they bought. I don't think in the near term is 10 years to me.
Okay.
We have a significant workforce housing issue here. Yes, we do. This doesn't solve it. All right, if we want to solve it, maybe there are ways to do it. All right, there's things that I did, all right, that may or may not have solved it, that we chose not to discuss. That's fine. This doesn't do anything except impinge upon that which people bought, and that's what their expectations were. That's my feeling,
Okay,
all right?
no, I appreciate it, like, it really does help, because I'm like, I don't live there.
No, but let me tell you, it is very, very different. All right. I now live in a community.
Yeah.
All right. All
Right,
of
2 years ago, it was not.
well, but we bought it. When we bought and built where we did. Those of you who don't know, we live in Greenpeak. All right. We fully expected that it would become a community. That was the intention of Bob Weil. For those of you that know Bob Weil, that was his intention. Didn't do it, couldn't find the people to buy other than that. We had a great time yesterday with our new people because it's a community of fairly nice, maybe very nice townhouses. And that's the community that we live in. I know people and I talk to people that are in LDR. They have a very different type of community. They should have respect. We should respect that community that they purchased and they expect. This takes it away. That's my strong feeling.
Okay.
John.
And doesn't solve the issue.
Yes, go ahead, Rich.
So I've been taking some notes, and I have several points I think I'd like to make, and then end with a question to the board and to the public here. The comment was made, the observation was made that we should work with, it's the Tyrell Corporation, right? And we are, the town is working with Tyrell on affordable or workforce housing, maybe a little different, but I think what we're trying to capture may be in affordable. So yeah, what the town is doing that. Inequity, I think what's striking is what Tara pointed out, that a single family home in HDR has to be 35 feet away from let's say the same exact house, which is abutting it in LDR, where in LDR it's 20 feet to another LDR property. So I think that's the sense of the inequity, right? Is that our fellow neighbors who live in a different zone, I'm not talking about multifamily units. I'm
No, there
talking
could
about,
be a multifamily. Once you
Right,
put
but
the
I'm
foundation
talking
in-
about-
Once you put the foundation in, that could be a multifamily. That's why the inequity exists.
yeah, I understand, but it is an inequity, right? So we agree it's an
intentional. Because you
Right,
can't
but it
determine,
impacts-
as the board has said, what the future state of.
But
the land is.
currently it impacts people who have single family homes
But
in
they bought no.
Visa, okay. Which
Not
is,
an inequity.
which is sort of
Not an
my,
inequity.
my third point. Again, I'm not arguing to, I'm just bringing out these points
I'm
for
gonna be
everybody
really
to.
clear. It's an intentional difference. in
Yes, I
zoning
agree.
laws Because there are.
And it's an
other
expectation.
differences Of how the land can be used.
Right, and then it's an expectation. And as I mentioned before, I think coming at zoning ordinances something that can never change is a very short-sighted way of looking at zoning. We all have
I think the
expectations.
fact that we've approved 11 things to go to town meeting out of 12 would indicate that the town's with you on that list.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that we do have expectations, but times change. So that's the only point I'm trying to make.
And 11
And that as a homeowner, and I happen to be a homeowner, that's sort of built into the equation. You know that your neighbor could do something next door, even if it's within zoning, that could have an impact on your quality of life. I want to get at this expertise. We've had a couple planning board members say it won't work. How do you know that?
Short term.
How do you know that? I mean, we hired two consultants, both of whom with extensive experience in the matter. Both of whom, I think one, Kayla, do you still work for the North Country Council? And I think. Go ahead. You do?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, and Tara did until she struck out independently, and because I have nothing better to do on weekends except taxes. And stuff like this. So I looked up, okay, who are these people? I don't mean personally, but the North Country Council. So the North Country Council has provided land use, transportation, environmental, community, and economic development planning services for 48 years. It is one of 9 regional planning commissions established in the state of New Hampshire by RSA 36:46. It is also a federally designated economic development district as defined by the U.S. Department of Commerce. So how do we know it won't work, is the question I have, because we have experts saying, this isn't the answer, but it does provide you some flexibility that may help you get where you want to go. And the last thing I have one more thing, and then I have a question. The last thing I want to bring up is this idea of balance, right? The board's job is to balance private interest with the public interest as best possible. And the public interest here in having affordable housing, as I see it, is, as I mentioned before, one of services to the residents who live here, not just commercial services, but I'm primarily concerned in town services. Our ability to retain and hire workers to do the things we want them to do with our tax money, if I can put it, I can put it that way. It's become extraordinarily difficult the last few years to solve that problem or to deal with that issue. So the balance here is one of privacy and in terms of expectation versus the sort of services that we think we all want as well. So I mean, again, it's a way of looking at it. It's not just taking away, maybe it's adding on. And so finally, sorry for all this, the question I have for both the board members and the public is what would be acceptable, if anything? Is, for example, option 5, where if we limited the decreased setback to single-family homes in HDR or VC, so you don't have that wall in front. I mean, is that where you guys are potentially going, or is it nothing? I just want, as a board member who has to vote on this, I think it a better, more granular feel for what the people here. Thank you for coming, by the way. Where your line is. So that's my question. And same with the board.
Daryl, hold on 1 minute, please. Alan.
With respect to why it won't work, you can just look to Tyrell, who wants to build a 3-story apartment building in a perfect place for workforce housing. And they refuse to make anything affordable. They tell you straight out, it's market rate housing. So if
That they will potentially subsidize the rents as part of their worker. Again,
That's their decision.
But
that we, and planning board has no say in that matter whatsoever.
that's not true, because we can tell them, put a 4th floor, but it can only be workforce housing.
Or the 3rd floor.
Or a 3rd floor. The
No,
second thing, let me continue.
okay, sorry.
Every town should have different places for different people. LDR was designed to have single-family homes with some space. Village Core was designed to have retail and, concentrated people. Mike chose to, live where he is, and he's entitled to that. Daryl and Lori are entitled to have their space. This is not, as been stated, it's not going to solve the problem. It's just going to compromise the LDR residences to the detriment of the people who paid to live there. It really, to me, it's really going to come down to, and you said it earlier, is this going to be a retirement community with a resort, or a resort with a retirement community? If it's a resort, first of all, do we want hundreds more cars in this town, or put them all in the village center where they can walk to where they want to go? If you put a house out on Flat Mountain Road, you have more cars, you need more parking, you need more police services, you need a lot more than if you put this concentration of people closer to town center. And that's what the other amendments are doing. I get it. Why do we have to do this, which is not even, we don't even know that it's going to work. And if you do the math, the average employee in New Hampshire makes, I brought this up last time, $51,000 a year. At most, that's $175,000 mortgage. You're not going to make that math work in LDR2.
So bear with me, there's a lot of hands up, so I'm gonna get everybody as we can, okay, hang on. Daryl, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just Darrell Fernandez, Flat Mountain Road. To answer your question, Rich, I feel like the first time we saw this amendment, it was a pretty interesting one, and I think to answer your question specifically, I don't know. I think it'd be phenomenal for the planning board to have a forum with the 15 impacted LDR landowners and discuss that. Whether it's lowering the restriction on the height of that adjacent property as a trade-off. I don't know what the right answer is. I just think we don't know enough to have something going to town. I think it's still there's a lot of energy around it, as you can see. So I'm not saying it should never happen and it should never adapt. I just don't think we've had enough conversation with the people actually impacted by it to know what the right answer is. And there may very well be a better answer than we know of in the 6 options or the 5 options that have been presented. I think it's worth a dialogue. I just don't think we're ready yet. That's my opinion. I agree with Jenny. I think putting it forward now feels very rushed because we feel like we created it, so therefore we must put it forward. I think you've heard a lot of energy from some of us who have been paying attention and who are impacted by it, that we'd like to understand it better. And if there are options, we'd like to understand those better. I think so. That's half of my response. The other half of my response is the only changes that Village Core has seen advance Village Core to do more high-end housing. There's a supply demand problem. You all have acknowledged it. The Village Core is only going to create more demand on employees. They're going to have more retail. They're going to have more restaurants. They're going to have more services. And there's no expectation that they need to do anything in their Village Core zoning to solve that problem. You're putting it right back on the residents to solve that problem for them. That's an interesting economic development. If you're going to quote an organization that's based to improve economic development, that's an interesting approach to economic development in Waterville Valley. Waterville Valley is not like the rest of New Hampshire. We're a tiny little town on a 12-mile access road in the middle of the White Mountain National Forest. To think that you're going to take a generic economic development approach to this town, I think is a really dangerous proposition. And so I think taking a step back, asking ourselves the question, why haven't, if the demand is coming from Village Core, why haven't we done more in Village Core zoning wise to make more flexibility for them to solve their own problem? Number one. And if they aren't going to solve their own problem, that says a lot about the willingness of everyone to solve this problem. They need it solved more than anybody. And number two, if you think there's merit in this particular amendment, I think more discussion is required before it goes to the town. And there's nothing I've said here, nothing I said in the last meeting that you won't hear again at a town meeting in front of the entire town.
Hang on. Jenny Lucas, did you have your hand up? You're okay.
Paul.
Paul does. Paul, go ahead.
I thank you. I'd just like to add something that I did say, I'll reiterate something that I did say that addresses this. There's nothing in the original proposed amendment or any one of these options, option number 4 or option number 5 in particular, that requires someone who wants to move it closer to actually show that they're going to achieve something in the goal. And that is provide affordable housing. So provides for anyone such as the village condominiums that Jenny alluded to just expand. I'll put a big patio there that gets closer to the property line than they're allowed to get to, even though it's a 20-foot tall structure, but it's not looked at as a structure, or to add on a unit. There's no linkage here. Any economic development, the term economic development has been thrown out, from a small economic development of a variety store, strip mall, or to a stadium, to build a stadium, has to show that there's an impact that achieves the goal. There's nothing in these amendments that are stating that. So I do think more work is needed.
Kathy, you want to elaborate on that?
Well, I think that 4 and 5, you can't put a patio, you can't do it. It has to be for residential, just to clarify that. It has to be, the structure would have to have, like I said, it couldn't be a patio, couldn't be a shed or anything like that. Just one.
Yeah, but nothing achieving the goal, which has been stated by Kayla and some others here today that it's going to increase the amount of affordable housing. There's nothing in there that says that. It allows anybody to do anything to make money, yes, but not necessarily for affordable housing. Where is the linkage to the goal?
Well, it's giving people the flexibility to rent a piece of their home out, or, you know, I don't think that we can tell somebody as a planning board that this has to be affordable housing, that they have to develop. I don't think that's in our scope.
Right.
It's just giving
So
people.
then, to the point the gentleman made, 2 or 3 speakers ago, there's nothing here that says that it's going to achieve the goal, which in the goal is the reason that's been given for even putting these amendments forward.
Tara and Kayla, I have a question that's been asked me many, many times. As far as a property line is concerned, what part of the building is considered a distance away from the property line? Is it the foundation? Is it the front steps? A lot of people have asked me that question. I wonder if you could just answer that for us.
I'd have to look at the definition in your zoning ordinance. It's usually the closest portion, whether it's an overhang or porch.
Yeah, just so everyone understands.
I asked that question when things were being built in our area, specifically on the roads, and we found out what it was.
Yeah.
And because you and I talked about that.
Yeah.
All right.
So this is just so everyone else can,
Yeah.
that's listening and.
Yeah, so it is, your definition is the nearest point of any structure. So it would be the deck or overhang.
Yep, that's so everyone gets it. Go ahead.
My feeling here, and this is why I love you, Rich, but this is why.
I love you, man.
No. You and I fight about and talk about all the time, but this
we
is why,
discuss.
this is why when you said whatever, I don't want to drop this. My feeling is, and I talk to people around town and everything else. This is something that is going to require, in my view, a great deal of discussion, a lot more than is we have time for now. I think the suggestion to bring in the 14 or 15 or whatever it is people by Zoom or whatever else, let's sit down and talk to them specifically. And that's why I use the word postpone. I don't want to drop this. All right. I want to postpone this. I want to bring the people in, sit down with them, preferably at a time when I'm not traveling, and see exactly what they want to say. I understand what they want to say. I understand that why they're sitting and saying, hey, if you're going to do this, we have to lower that so we don't have our view dropped. That's a very valid concern. There are other valid concerns that all should be explored in a lot more detail, in my view, than has been done. My view, personal view, is don't drop it, postpone it, continue it, use whatever term you use so that we actually spend the time and effort to truly understand. I understand what 15 feet means. All right. I understand when I had discussions with the people that were building things and they sat here and said, well, we're gonna add this much to your driveway. And I say, I'm gonna have to pay for that. We'd had to discuss it and move all those. This requires a lot more discussion, specifically with those people. And we're hearing than we've had.
Well, we've had one public hearing.
But that isn't that what the public hearing is
Yes.
for?
No,
That's what the public hearing is for.
I don't want a
Okay?
public hearing.
We
But that's
know we
the
have
next
to be
step, is
public.
a public hearing,
Yeah.
because these are all great ideas, and to your point.
My
But-
understanding
We've had
is
many.
that, my understanding is that we can give, because I've spoken to people, we can give a special invitation, which does not exclude other people, but plan a meeting at a special time with those people with a specific invitation to them to come in and say, this is being discussed, that which impacts you. Everyone else can come, but it impacts you directly.
That's a public hearing.
But were they invited specifically?
Everybody's
Every-
invited.
Because.
Were they told?
It's a definitional question. I
Right.
get it, but That's why we have public hearings.
But
And these
many of us found
meetings.
out kind of accidentally about
Right.
the last public hearing, because there's a lot of business that you all are driving. And
Right.
we all, and we can't pay attention to every town committee on every public item every week to know, hey, this one's gonna impact me. You're asking the
Yeah,
chair,
yeah.
all Mike's doing is saying, let's give them special notice that we're gonna talk about a topic that impacts them and have a dialogue, because
That's my view.
that's not happened.
That's my,
Some issue.
That also.
I don't know if, I don't,
requires town, though.
I spoke
Mike,
to
hold
someone
on.
legally,
Mike,
they said you could,
Michael.
maybe I'm wrong.
Michael J.
Okay.
Appel, wait. This is why we have to have a public, transparent hearing. No other way around it. You can't just have 15 people come in.
That's not what I said.
Okay, let's stop right there, okay? We get what you're talking about. You had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, so I also have talked to people, we run in different circles, obviously, we don't overlap a lot, and the people who don't own property are frustrated that this thing seems so insignificant to people who don't own property. And I think it's important for you guys to come here and state why you feel that way, because on the other side, it's like, well, they already own their house, what's the big deal? So to have you guys come here and actually say these things really has helped. It doesn't change the way I feel, because like some people have said, choice, you choose where you live. I don't have a choice where I live. I can't afford it. So I live in a small condo, but I'm here and I give back to my community and I'm doing my civic duty, which you guys are also doing by being here. And yes, you can't keep track of every single thing. That's impossible. Nobody can do that. Unless you're rich, apparently.
No, no, don't.
But but I think there have been words thrown around like disrespectful to the property owners, and I don't feel it's that way at all. And we're not trying to do this progress for the sake of progress. This is taking small steps toward making something more approachable. And there also the word has been thrown around clandestine. We've held many public hearings. We are public. There's nothing clandestine about it. So that's
Rich.
just where I'm at.
Rich,
Yeah, two things very, very quickly. It's apparent that the board is very split in this, and that weighs heavily on me. I think I've always tried to get a consensus. Anyone who sees me either on a select board or here realizes I put high value in consensus in reaching a decision, and it doesn't appear that we're there. More importantly, there's one person here on the board who hasn't said a word. Has been taking all this in, whose opinion I value very highly, and I would like to hear what he has to say, and then I'd like to call the question.
So,
And that would
Mr.
be
Chairman, can I
Mr. Smith.
step up finally?
oh, Rich, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think there's been some great points made. I feel like Jenny and Daryl have they've provided some summary comments that have sort of echoed just my thoughts on this. And that's that the board hasn't done nothing to date with regard to trying to do some things that would open up some possibilities for additional development that would create housing stock. And it's not, housing stock by itself can, I believe, affect the cost of the housing in general, right? So if we're adding stock, prices generally, around here might be fairly significant, but the more of it there is, the possibility of lower cost seems to be real. And there's been however many amendments put forward that are eventually going to go to town meeting. Heard a lot from the public about those, and they're pretty positive things. This particular amendment, not so much. To your point, Daryl, about like we'd like a forum here, but I think we've had close to a forum, right? Because 6 or more of the people who are affected have provided their comments, and we've heard those, I think, loud and clear. I think everyone would agree. We understand where you're coming from. I don't believe at this time that we should feel bad about bringing the amendments that we want to forward. I just don't think this one's quite there yet. And I do believe, I don't have, I don't have a voice, but I've got energy. Thank you. I think maybe a little bit more energy towards some things that we could potentially impact in the village core would be a much more good use of our time, or better use of our time. And than attacking this particular issue. And what I mean by that is, if there's any possibility of getting what we desperately need as workforce housing, you know, we have this option that, you know, is down the road. We know it's down the road, but I believe it's closer down the road than what we're talking about with this particular amendment. And any additional work that we could do to ensure that village commercial takes into account the needs of the, you know, commercial interests in town, which, by the way, are, I think, my interests. I want to have people able to serve me. I want to have our shops open 7 days a week, you know, and not closing because they can't get people. It's really something that's a more, I forget the way you put it, Daryl, I could use some help, but the economic prospects of this town are based on, can we do any further development in this community to be supportive of itself? And that's the housing that we need, the commercial entities that would want to spring up in here, because we have the ability to staff them up and have them open when they need to be, so they can make the money and in turn provide the services that we all want. So that was a ramble. It's been held in for a long time, as you mentioned. I wanted to make sure I get that out. And I was going to. I was
Good.
Thank
I don't know
you.
if I'm going next.
Yeah, that was good.
Any questions on what I just said? Hopefully it made sense.
No, I,
Just put everybody to sleep.
yeah,
No,
no, you
it's
didn't.
good.
No, you didn't. We have to come up with some kind of forward motion today. Something, Mike, I got your point.
No, no, no,
you're
I,
good.
you wanted a motion.
I'm gonna pick you, but I just
Pick
want
on
to
me.
elaborate on what you just talked about. You know, it's a good point, but go ahead.
Again, I agree, this is something needs more discussion, and you know how I feel about it. I move that, unfortunately, can we make a change to the wording here? We cannot?
Well,
Those are just the-
we go to a public hearing if you make any changes. We don't have to go to a public hearing if we just
Fine.
set
No, no,
aside,
no,
if that's where
I-
you're going.
That's fine.
We still have to have a
You know,
public
you know my
hearing.
feeling, I prefer the word,
If we drop it, we don't.
no, I understand. I prefer the word postpone to drop, but as you said, they can be used interchangeably
In this case.
in this case. I accept that. So I move that we accept option 2. All right, which is drop from the March amendments. And I don't know if I can say this or not, but with the understanding that we will continue to discuss it. That's the way I would like it to be stated, if that's legitimate. Can I
You
say
could-
it that way? I don't know what I'm looking.
Mike, if you could add in the year, March of,
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
I-
amendment.
right.
Proposed amendment.
I move that we accept option 2 with the understanding that we continue to discuss it so that it can be brought forward in the March 2025 meeting. Can I say that?
you can.
Okay, that's what I said.
Be it being amendment, the proposed amendment number
6.
6, yes. Okay,
For the record.
yeah, is that okay?
Help Alicia out one more time on that.
I'm sorry. But that's my feeling anyway.
Okay.
I think that's.
So we want to discuss it in 2025.
Yes, proposing that we drop it and move it to a 2024-2025 meeting discussion.
Right, so which gives us off the discussion, which gives us more time, A, to discuss it, and B, to bring in more people, because what we're hearing is very important.
No,
That's not
understood,
the
but-
motion. Wait, keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, what does Alicia have?
All right,
Second
whatever.
and
Yeah, so let's get it right so we can have it in the minutes and
Just
have
need
it
to decide
correct.
if it-
I would, I mean, I know option 2, but people, you know.
I'm sorry.
Actually say. To drop.
Right.
Read what option 2 is and then.
I move that we dropped the proposed amendment for the March 2024 town meeting.
It's vote, not town meeting.
You say it. You know what I'm saying?
So I think Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily just look at it the option. I would just said, I propose that we drop from further consideration. After public hearings and 2 further, planning board meetings. That we drop from consideration proposed amendment number 6. I think that's all we have to say because it's everywhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
That one, someone want to second it?
I second that.
Oh, you can't second it. Oh,
No, Rich
Well,
made it.
Rich made it.
Rich made it.
okay.
Rich and I are working together.
All right, so you second it?
I second.
So a yes vote is to drop it.
To drop it.
So any further
As
discussion?
is.
Yeah, we have to have it.
A little more discussion?
Can we discuss, in that discussion, say that we intend to continue to look at it? That.
That's your
I can do that.
That's,
Yep.
I mean, that's my feeling and why I started initially saying, I don't want to drop, I want to postpone. That's my feeling is this is important.
Yeah.
I feel we have a lot more, unfortunately. I think we have a lot more work to do after especially hearing from our fellow townspeople, that
Sure.
we have a lot more work to do.
Yeah. Rick?
I think it's fine to continue to discuss this, but I wonder whether or not there are other things that we could do. Now, I know there's been an awful lot of work to identify the opportunities and we've acted on a lot of those already. But are there other things that we could look at that would be way more impactful? Like what we can do in village commercial or to village commercial to generally get us headed in the right direction versus spending time on this particular amendment or things like it that may or may not have an impact down the road.
John,
Yes.
has her hand.
Yes, Tara.
There are other things that were on Kayla's list of possibilities. I did want to clarify one thing that might have been a misunderstanding earlier in the discussion. Somebody used the words require Terrell to build workforce housing, and that's not something you can do under New Hampshire law, but there certainly are other possible zoning changes to consider.
Yep.
So we
I
have-
have
we
one
did-
more question.
Yeah, we gotta, go ahead.
When does the grant for the Housing Opportunities Project end?
Somewhere.
This
I think
summer?
it's this summer. I thought we got the answer to that
I
last.
think it's yes.
Kayla just shook her head.
Kayla, is June the final work and invoice?
Yeah, June 30th is sort of the end of things.
That's kind of what we said last time.
Okay.
So we would have another 5 months, sort of.
So just to clarify, we're gonna vote against moving forward amendment number 6 as written in option 1.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear. We,
With
We
an
vote that?
informal understanding that we will continue to look at things.
We may not.
I don't.
I think that's a
think
Well,
possibility.
that's not part of the thing. That's fine. Okay, never mind.
let's-
Okay, go ahead.
You wanna call the vote? Call
I call the vote.
the, go ahead, Mike.
I,
Start with you for,
Yes,
so
at the table it, no.
a
it's not.
yes vote means that we table it, right?
that we drop, yeah.
Right, yes.
and wait a minute, a yes, table it, and a no would be to,
Continue the discussion.
Well, to continue the discussion on
To
this
move to
amendment,
public hearing.
but
Here.
yes, this is to drop it right now.
Right. A yes is yes. Never mind.
and everybody is seated, so your vote,
Yes,
I'm gonna go with yes.
No.
Yes,
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
6-1.
and it took us an hour and a half.
Hey, record time.
Wow.
Okay.
Oh, Alicia, you good?
Yep, I'm done.
Okay. Okay, everyone, I think this concludes our mission for today.
John, you
Yes,
guys need to schedule a public hearing on the building code amendment
Still have to do.
that
Yeah.
I'm gonna suggest become amendment number 6 rather than 11.
Yes.
okay,
Okay, Hopefully that'll be short and sweet.
Will that be
I think that would be
confusing?
confusing. I agree, John. Kayla, just because I do think that's confusing. If it's at all possible to keep it as 11, just because.
Can we
I
do
don't
that?
know. What do
Yeah,
you think?
I
It's
don't
just-
think, it gets weird, but there's nothing in state law that would prohibit it.
Keep it as 11.
I think we need to keep it as 11.
Okay, you need to schedule a public hearing.
And the last
February.
possible date is the last
The
pos-
25th
of,
is the last possible.
of February,
No, of January.
oh, of January.
Alright, so we
Sorry.
got
Because we have to give.
So this week or next?
Tuesday through Wednesday.
Mr. Chairman, we have to give 10 days. Clear notice.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
25th would be the
The-
last day.
Mark, it would be the 26th.
Or 26, sorry. Yep.
So,
Which was a Friday, so we had that.
last week you guys talked about.
Or it could be the 29th, 30th.
Yeah, we do have that. We have something scheduled for the public hearing on 6 p.m. at 6 p.m. on the 31st from last
Oh,
meeting.
right.
that's right, we did do that.
Yes, we did
Yeah,
do
you
that.
did the third.
I'll be-
So that's good.
That's good.
I'll be in Singapore.
So we got it already, Tara. Believe it or not, we actually did it earlier,
Calculated.
Yeah,
So we can do January,
31st at 6
31.
p.m. for the
What,
one.
was that scheduled for this or for something else?
no,
I didn't-
that's for taking care of the building permit
The
thing.
cleanup.
yeah. So we
Clean
can,
up. You still have to do that, I think.
Yeah, last meeting, we were anticipating possibly having to deal with two amendments, but this one, we decided not to move forward on, or we decided to move forward on one and not the other. But last time, Tara, I believe we set the date for the public hearing for 31 January at 6 p.m.
Okay, I didn't catch that.
yeah, there was so
We
many
have-
different
so many
dates we
dates.
went on and we got confused.
And I think that, yeah, I mean, that works for the town in terms of getting it all out
So the public hearing on January 31,
at 6 p.m.
Yes.
is on the first issue we discussed. Change in zoning ordinance to align it with.
Selectmen's ordinance.
Selectmen's
Amendment
ord-
11.
Yeah, Amendment 11, shorthand.
Amendment 11. Okay. And do we have any other meetings prior to that one meeting?
Oh, no.
Me too.
No.
Okay, and we already agreed on January 31, 6 p.m. So,
John,
For the
can I just
public.
ask one question before we discontinue?
sure, go ahead.
Could we ask Tara to give us any more ideas on how to do what Rick was talking about, which is increasing density, if you will, of village court?
I think the thing to do would be to send out Kayla's review of the zoning again, so that you have the other options in front of you.
Right, because we did vote.
Besides
against many of
those,
them.
is there anything else?
Not putting forward.
Is that okay, Kayla? Will you do?
I mean, I think what you're asking is just to review what, ask Kayla to review what she provided before, see if there's anything in addition she
Right.
could provide, in terms of recommendations, things to talk about, that we eventually got to where we are today. So I remember you sent something out in July, was it, Kayla?
Yeah, months blend together for me, but yes. So what I can do is I can send out sooner. I'll just resend what's already been sent. And then if you want, I'll take another look at the village core, building off of all of the discussion that's happened between summer and now, and see if there's other things I'd add. I'll circulate that to Tara and then we can get that out to you all.
Right, does that make
What-
sense?
Yeah.
One of the things that really important that has been brought up is that my understanding from what everything is done and what people I've spoken to is that we cannot make as a condition, for example, that if residential is built above commercial, we cannot require it to be affordable housing. All right, so that if somebody if Terrell builds shops and builds residential on top of it, yes, they could make it affordable housing, or they could make it $1 million condos.
Well,
We-
Mike, you'll you'll see this in what Kayla sends out, but that's true, but there are things you can do that make it more likely to be affordable, like
Yeah.
limiting the square footage and not allowing them to be short-term rentals.
Yeah.
No, I understand,
Yeah, that was.
but not making it a short-term rental
We
still could make it $1 million.
Well,
condo.
let's rediscuss it.
Yeah, right,
We could do that.
I agree.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Can we make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion. we
I
adjourn.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you for coming,
Thank you.
everyone. Well, that was